So welcome, Women's Day, National Women's Day. Woo! So the prayer that I said was to bring us to the center, and we always have our center present whenever we give talks and presentations, because it reminds us and it connects us back to Mother Earth and to the elements that feed us and support us. So on we don't call it an altar, we call it a centering table, because when you go to schools, most schools, they don't allow altars per se, but you can have a centering. And so the centering brings us to the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual aspects of our work as Tewa women in our communities. And the 4 corns are for the directions, but they're also the corns that feed the different peoples that are in the whole on Mother Earth. So there's the yellow, the blue, the white, and the yellow for all the directions. So they're in the directions, and our water, sacred water, is here. And water is here listening as well as being present to nurture us. And then there's lavender pouches on the centering that the grandmothers have made for us to share, so you're welcome to that. And then this is my first time doing a frizzy, so hopefully, do I start all over again? Come here. Okay. I'm going to take this also.
You don't know about this? Okay.
I guess so. So, and we also have used trauma rocks, so they're here. I won't go through the whole exercise, but I will explain them as quickly as I can. And so, Tewa Women United is a gathering of intertribal women, but I wanted to give the beginnings because I was part of the group that was there, not right at the beginning. So I want to go a little bit further back than the beginning of Tewa Women United, so that you can get a perspective of how I came into the picture. So around, not yet. So around the late 1980s, I was working on a project with Sue's husband, who's passed on, but Don Runstrom. And so he's a visual anthropologist. So we're working on a video for my family lineage in pottery. My great-grandmother was Maria Martinez, and so we're filming the story of women that carried forth the traditions of pottery. And so having that 5 years or so to work with Don in going back and forth between what we believe in our Tewa way of being, and then how does that translate into the Euro-American way, and in 3-second sound bites, because we're going to do a video. So it was back and forth. So that helped me to center and to be able to get thoughts out. And then from there, in the beginnings for Tewa Women United, it was started, and I called our dear friend, Our Lady, our co-founder, Sylvia Medina. She took a women's course because she had grief in her family, in her loss of her husband through 30 years of marriage. And then she took a Women in Transition course here at Santa Fe Community College here. And that was again in probably 1985 or so, around in there. And so she had expressed the desire that, God, I wish that there was a gathering place for women, because we all have our grief, we also have our loss, we all want to work and help our children, but there was no place. And so from that grew a support group, and that was what blossomed into Tewa Women United. So that was in 1988, I think, was the formal thinking about it. In 1989, I lost my auntie who raised me, And so my sister, Evelyn, was in the group with Sylvia, and she said, come to our support group. It'll be good for you. And so from that point on was when I became more involved in Tewa Women United, and also bringing a lot of the thoughts that I already had and how to make a place for women that was safe and courageous, so that so we're meeting in different people's houses for a while. And so let's see now, I think, oh gosh. So that was the short beginnings of Tewa Women United, and it's in the northern pueblos of New Mexico. So the women there are young and old, and they have their mouths open so that they can sing and they can speak and be heard. And all the baskets with the corn, the food, the pueblo, the oven, pottery making, and then the evergreen surrounding it. So this one, I don't think I can make it any bigger, but this was a philosophy that we started with. And I don't know the origins of the statement, but so let's see. So on the top it says Ding Teami. So through experiencing of ancestral ways, we Tewa Women United will strive to nourish the beingness of our pulsating earth, mother of all life, to nurture spirit-rootedness of place peoples, children of our Mother Earth, to respect the integrity of indigenous peoples of our worlds, our ways, our beliefs, and our Tewa path of being, to nurture and strengthen energy bonding of multiversal spirit of reciprocity, earth to people and peoples to peoples, in a manner harmonious with the cyclical nature of our breath of life, to aid in broadening the availability and appreciation of cultural diversity, the values, languages, beliefs, and ways, for connectiveness of all is represented in one's own community. In implementing the simultaneity of directional fluidity, Tewa Women United must exercise loving care to understand, process, maintain, and/or improve the physical, economic, political, social, emotional, mental, and spiritual spheres in which indigenous peoples flourish. Again, in a manner harmonious with multiversal natural laws of thought, light, and giver of life. So that was a big gulp to work from, but that was what centered us and kept us consciousness of the work we want to do, so we wouldn't fall into the traps of the colonial Euro-American male patriarchal system of why were we having so much sexual abuse in our communities, why were our children going to alcohol, why were, why, all the whys of those were symptoms of the colonial practices that we find ourselves in. So I was glad that we were also nurtured in the early days by Dr. Eduardo Duran and his wife, Bonnie Duran, and they had written a book called Native American Post-Colonial Psychology. That was like the cornerstone of starting to address the colonial systems. But he mentored us in our early stages, so that was very helpful in being able to have trauma-informed services developed in our work and being able to address it. And another, this slide, our story is coming from Dr. Corinne Sanchez, my daughter, and the chapter of our story is in, I thought I had it. Yeah. It's in the Journal of American Indian Education, and so there's a chapter on Tewa Women United. So these slides are coming from that frame of knowing who we are as Tewa Women United. So because we started with our philosophical statement, that cued us back into our core values. What are our beliefs? What are our values that we hear inside our communities, and how do we put them into our organization? We didn't become a 501c3 until 2001. But still, our guidance was going and implementing our core values. And I think if I hit it, they get bigger. No. I thought it went zoomed up. But, so like, winetaye. So winetaye is like respecting each other. So whatever we hear in our Tewa villages, in a lecture, in how to be in life, like sigimave, I mean having loving care for each other. So we implemented those core values into how we do our work. And we worked with 10 core values, but there's lots more. But we started with the 10. And so our organizational model that we were using was about energy, sacred energy, sacred space. And so this is not a hierarchical model of organization, but it's about spheres of influence and the mobility and the movement and the circle of the programs that we have centered around our business and our management and financial departments, and they move, and the spheres are together in that inner circle that are being supported by our circle of grandmothers. So they're always our guidance to get us all into finding out if we're implementing, if we're doing, if we're thinking. And especially in trauma-informed services, you're really overwhelmed by it's never ever been lessened. We're still finding ourselves doing the same struggles, and it becomes heartening, and you can get angered, you can get embittered if you don't have your cleansing and recharge and your connections back. So this was a very moving model that we developed, mobility and spheres and up, down, around, like the nucleus of an atom or a there it's bigger. Just don't know. So Aging is respectful caring of self and others. And Nang Ochukuyo is our reverence for Mother Earth and all her gifts and life as Tewa people. And then Kuiwa Sengwa Vitu, that's male and female energies of the ancestral knowingness, that there's that balancing of the male and female energy within us. So there's never a question about the outer appearance, but what's in the soul, what's in your spirit, how are you rooted in that to have your life, in your life journey. So I think even as today we're celebrating International Women's Day, and we are honoring women, but for Tewa Women United it was male and female in that journey in going forward. So we had our struggles with having the men in our communities understand what it was to come from the heart, with the heart of a mother, and centering in order to embrace all. And so we'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary pretty soon. So our culture is our strength and our core, with the core values. And so in having that responsibility of caring and sharing, you're protecting the most vulnerable in our communities. So the most vulnerable are the women, girls, and Mother Earth, because of the constant assaults that are happening with a culture of violence. So our mission was to provide safe spaces. That was around the coffee tables, around the houses. But now we're saying our mission is to provide courageous spaces for Indigenous women to uncover the power of within, the strength that we have and the skills we possess to be positive forces for social change. And that has guided us again, because it's that transformative change we're going for, with a vision for a way into the future, and that transformation looks backward. So you're not stuck with the blockages, the ways that they try to get us to do a bumping head situation, but it's more of, so the term that has come forward now in these ages are resistance. This is a time to resist. So what we were saying was, this is, if you take the word and reclaim it, then it's resistering. You're connecting back, your brotherhood, your sisterhood. And so it doesn't have that bumping heads attitude, but that embracing. So even as we were groomed to be oppressed, the other side of the oppressor side, they were also groomed to be the oppressor. So it happens on both sides. So we have to really help each other to understand and to work from the heart, and tying the mind, the heart, and the spirit together. So Tewa Women United believes in strengthening beloved families and communities to end the violence against women, girls, and Mother Earth. And now the younger generation, we had a strategic planning, and the younger generation is saying, this is a negative way of saying end the violence. And so they were saying, let's be encompassing with our beloved communities, and how do we address it in a positive way. So we're working on our mission and our vision to see if they're going to be redefined or reaffirmed. So that's a process. So in believing in beloved families and communities, all our children are able to grow to have that loving, caring, nurturing, and the powerfulness of beingness. Everyone has a place and a role and a responsibility. And our love for Mother Earth and all the beings that are seen and unseen. And then science took that from us again too, when we said seen and unseen. So we deal a lot with living next to Los Alamos National Laboratory. They flop themselves in our sacred mountain, in our sacred space. So they created the bomb in 1945 there. And so we believed in our spiritualness. And so they said, oh, well, we'll take their words and put seen and unseen, which is true, because then they do deal with the nuclear energy. But the way they use the love of Mother Earth, which is energy, is that they take apart the atoms and blast the energy out of them. And so that's how microwave ovens and the bombs work. They ignite and blast that energy out. So that energy is love. So we have to reclaim, how do we protect our lovingness? How do we protect that energy that sustains? So the story that I know, in telling the story, it's his story. And it's the history is written from a male perspective. But in understanding, I think now there are churches and groups that are learning about the doctrine of discovery, of how the United States of America came into existence, and what the culture of violence is that they perpetrated. And under 23 presidencies, there was genocidal practices to clear the land and make room for the settlers. And so the doctrine of discovery was what they used, and the papal bulls to come and do what they did. So in understanding the history, or this, now we're calling it her story, or the life narratives of peoples that are here. And so this lineage line of the events here in the United States is there. And it starts way into the current. And there's probably more added this way now, because we're going backwards in reinstating a lot of the wins that we had with the civil rights movements and stuff. So trauma rocks, and they're right there on the stage, because there's a difference between historical trauma and generational trauma. And so we've worked in understanding that. And so what we're finding is that first generation, and having the concept of the atoms and the molecules, we worked with the number 3 just because you can see it multiplying and handle it as opposed to if you start with 10 or 12 and then it's an exponential harm that's being done. So if we started here when the colonizers came, the first generation, if we gave, it's falling. Did I break it? Let me try to put it back on. It was on the pants. Okay. Okay. So in asking in prayer, I believe in dream space a lot. So we asked in prayer at night, how do I show the impact, the harm that's being done to our children, and how generational trauma is being explained is not really correct. But how does historical trauma work into our lives? And so the first generation, I used 3 rocks, 3 things that are harmful that we keep inside of us. So if my great-grandmother had, at the time, that was when genocide was happening and there was killings happening. But if they spoke out as women, then they were saying, quiet, the men will protect you. We are here to protect you, but if you say it and they hear it, they're going to come at us again. So there had to be silence on that. And then because the colonizers were coming in and they were mostly men, they started to rape and start to have access to the girls and stuff. But the grandmas were like, no, that's not right. And they said, shh, be quiet. Because if they know that there's more girls in the village or there's more, they're going to come after, so it was like silencing. And so then the pain is held inside and thinking that if I don't speak about it, it's not going to travel. And so it's sealed. And so the next generation, because they're being silenced, and the men usually are shown standing on this side, because men were recognized by the colonizers coming in, but the men would always hold a hand out. Shh, be quiet, I'm looking out for you. But they were taught to, but not the women. And so the grandma, if she's giving birth to her children, they would just tap them on the shoulder, not speaking because they can't tell what's in here. They give it to the next generation, and again, they don't know what's in here. And so this generation of my great-grandmother, that would be like where Maria would be. It's inside of her. And she says, oh, okay, well, if I know it's an economic depression time because they've taken away our ability to have our farming. They don't want us farmers. They think we're low. And so she's went to pottery and stuff. But still, her bag is sealed. And so this silencing, this pressure starts to bring in a lot of the alcoholism, a lot of the numbing, the drugging. And they weren't the ones that developed it. They were giving that to keep them silent. And so the next generation would be my grandmother. Now my great-grandmother still kept all her traditional wares. She still was wearing her moccasins, her clothes, and her language, and she learned how to speak Spanish. She had her Tewa, and then she learned English. But she never went to a formal school. I think she said about to 3rd grade. And so then my grandmother, now my grandfather started to work in the janitorial services in Santa Fe and at the lab. Again, you're still quiet. Our traditional dances and things have gone underground, and it's sealed. So the pain is getting heavier, and so now it's really getting to be dependent on painkillers or drugs. But still, nobody knows what's here. And the children are sitting on the ground watching. They're not being spoken to. So the children are looking and saying, well, why isn't grandma talking to great-grandma? And why can't I go see my uncles over there? And is something wrong with me? They're not talking to me. Did I cause my grandma to cry every night? How could, so all those questions. But there could be 10, well, in my family there were 8, but 6 siblings sitting here, and each one has a different perception of what happened. So even if you went back, and don't you remember, we were sitting in that house, and then and my sister would say, no, that's not the way it happened. where did you get that? You know, so you're still having that dispute of not being validated for your story as children. And so then the third generation taps and gives it to the mother. And that would be like me at that time. And again, they didn't tell me what was in here. It was heavy, and I was getting angry because my mom was starting to really drink and party. But you'll notice that the bag is also getting puffy. So you can see there's something sort of inside. It might be now ulcers, it might be now problems. But what I use to illustrate is the gas. There's trapped gas because you're not speaking, you're not letting it out. And so gas is guilt, anger, shame. All that is stuffed, and it's sealed. And so the next generation, it's the fifth generation. And again, I gave them the bag and said, be quiet, I've got to do what I got to do to help us. And so then my children are getting mad at me and say, Mom, we hate you, you're never home, you're always gone. But the beatings happened, I needed to get away, I needed to get my education, I know I had to do something, but I wasn't going to share it with the kids because I didn't want them to hate their dad. But they were hating me because I was the one they could see leaving. And so the children are carrying this, they're starting to feel the pain. And now you have more of the, again, the drugs, the alcohol, and the medication. And so then the next children, the sixth generation, they get their bag, and they're not speaking about the problem. No, the term healing hasn't even entered the vocabulary for people. And so this bag is stuffed in here. It's getting way heavy. It's getting all that gas. It's getting sealed. And so if nothing is shared, then it's 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So it's 729 rocks that have developed from the 3. And by now, if you're trying to find explanations, well, why didn't Grandma apologize? Why didn't, they're already dead and gone. And so you're carrying this and you're wondering. And then the kids, have you noticed them with their backpacks? There's a law now or something that says they can't carry these heavy backpacks. Well, if they have this inside of them, they're gonna be grumpy, they're gonna be heavy, they're gonna be tired. But the seventh generation, their bags, because cells, like cancer, is affecting the cells on top, around, and in and around. And then, so if that's infected, then the next one, so it's real exponential. So then, for the seventh generation, if nobody has healed or talked about it, then their 3 becomes, wow, 2,187 from that 3. It is heavy. So when you want to do healing and talking about trauma-informed services, you start with the children, the most vulnerable, the women, the children. And when you help children open their bag, they don't deal with all this. That's still sealed. But they open and they can see how their rocks might be just somebody calling them oh, you're just dumb. Oh, you're just an Indian. Oh, you're just, and they get angry and they get upset, and then they, you know, then if the gun is there, that's what they're going to get. If the drug is there, that's what they're going to do. They're wanting to buy attention. They want to buy love. They want to get rid of those that have hurt them. So unless we help them with their understanding where these pains are coming from, and then when the children are cared for in a beloved community, so it might not be the immediate family source because it's the outer support systems. So if the community had that program or had a feeding or had, as a children, our back here, there's a basket of hope. There's a basket of seeds. What we feed them is the memory that's in the foods. So we want to get to the organic, the natural good foods. And so the children are passing on the seeds of hope, because that's what their survival and their thought is. So there's a big basket of seeds that are coming forward at the same time. So I know I'm probably taking up a lot of time on that one, but let's see. So we use a braiding model of braiding in our mind, our heart, and our spirit in our work. And so the braiding was used as a sign of power and authority in traditional ways. Before the canes came in from the colonial systems, they had, the canes of power had a leather that was woven. So it was a leather for strength, a leather for saying your mind, your heart, and your spirit are together so you can be for your community. And it was also a whip if they were misbehaving. But it was done with all those things in consideration, not as a punishment itself, but as a way to really guide, your guidance. So TW around the thoughts have been about theory of opeti, braiding your mind, your heart, and your spirit. And there's a whole chapter in Corinne's book to get familiar with that. And so the research methodology that we had, again, goes, to me, it goes way back to Dr. Waldo Duran, to Corinne, and to the people that have really helped us to have a philosophical statement of how to be in doing our work. And so those things are coming up as far as what year, generation, what's happening, and to be current in healthy relations. My thing right now is to get rid of the ship, because the colonizers came in a ship, and so I want to take a relationship, take the ship off, and it's about relations. It's not about leadership. It's not who's at the helm and the top and the front, because we're still being oppressed. So it's about having a way to lead from the heart, or lead from as a term. So just English, even in its vocabulary, in its framing, it's how would I say, insidious with how they still oppress with the words, the pictures, and the thoughts. So we have to reclaim and redefine everything. So we have 4 other programs in Tewa Women United. We have our environmental health and justice, and that started first because, again, 1945, they wanted to have power, and so they created the bomb in our place. And so in 1945 was the last home births that we had. They sent everybody to a hospital, and the hospitals were run by the military. So we didn't have access to records. They didn't show up anything of what was coming into our bodies with the nuclear radioactive materials they were working with, because they were just dumping it in the canyons and blowing it up, practicing, and even now Los Alamos is doing that again yet, because it's money's pouring in to create new modernized nuclear mini nukes. And the voices was to value our integrity with courage, empowerment, and support to address the sexual violences, the assaults and things that are happening. Because now it's increasing again because of the fracking that's happening, and man camps are developing all along the pathway. So Circle of Grandmas, again, in that circling around with our values, our beliefs, our prayers, our blessings, our healings. That is like a 24/7 cleansing you need when you're working in trauma-informed services. And as women are seen as reflections of Nang Ochukuyo, each woman is an embodiment of Mother Earth. And so the reproductive and sexual health is at the heart of how we care for the most vulnerable and our women and our girls. So the program that we have developed, Akging, is about healthy sexuality and body sovereignty, teaching them life skills. So there's our pivotal moment. Light bulb goes off. And so our reclaiming
reclaiming the culture of peace. So the culture of peace has more of the consent. So we're going to consensual societies. So that's a new one that is taking away the concept of, the domination. It should be a consensual relationship. Relations. See, I caught myself. So that's the Yavikagindi is our support for the young moms and mothering and caring for how we nurture from the beginning the bonding between mother and child, father and child, all the kins that are there. And then we have our economic leadership, and that's where the young program also lies, and how to empower intergenerationally and work with our moon cycles. See, we got to have our grandma moon in there. And we base it around how we care for our foods is how we care for our children. And there's always only two corns that come on a stalk, and that's being cared for by the three sisters, the food, tending to all the stages of growth of food and the honoring that we have for Mother Earth is in the model that we're using on our curriculums for our children, and the book is there. So body sovereignty. Because now the word sovereignty is being thrown around, but usually it was delegated to tribal sovereignty, but everybody has that ability to have that mind, heart, and spirit with the ancestral ways of knowing in ourselves who we are. And then, of course, our men for Tewa Women United, they have Sengipa Dipameng, meaning our young boys are becoming men. So there's a nurturing that happens in engaging our supportive men and boys into that kinship, that relations, the connections with each other and Mother Earth. And it has its ups and downs, but still it's that energy of cleansing and recharging. So reaching across movements and not being siloed into, oh, you're a tribal program, you have to go to this tribal services, or oh, you're about sexual violence, you're not about, so that we're trying to really have that braiding of all our energies so that we're not isolated, separated, and have that dichotomization that tries to have the cultural violence be the winning source. So protecting the most vulnerable, braiding. How am I doing on time? Almost. So one of the programs that we have is talking about how much allowable harm are we allowing into our body if women is the first environment, and how do we make the U.S. standard of allowable toxins to come into us to be addressed in protecting our women, our children, our Mother Earth. When the most vulnerable are protected, then everybody is protected. Now they're trying to make it less so that there'll be more toxins allowed in you. But the model that the United States is using is that it's a fake, like that skeleton there, it's a fake man. I call him Ken's, Barbie's boyfriend, Ken. So he's like so we say, oh, well, we'll make him a white man. Oh, we'll make him 154 pounds. Oh, he'll be an urban one. So they based it all on a fake reference man to be how much allowable harm are going to come into a woman, how much is going to be allowed to come into a baby, a child. So that's what our campaign is about, to really get to protect the most vulnerable. So there's references if you go to our website, and our website has been hacked twice. So I don't know if it's up again, but That's where we have a lot of our information, our programs, our petitions. So we want to be able, if we basing it on the corn model, then it's uprooting the culture of violence and then love, the seed that produces the fruit of the Spirit. So I think now I want to stop right there. There's more, but I think that's, love is the energy that sustains us. And love is the energy that, if it's used in the negative way, produces that massive irradiated harm, because it's unnatural that it's being released out of its source of sustenance. So, being International Women's Day, woo-woo, I'll stop right there with love. Okay. I don't know if there's time for questions. Andrew?
Yes, I just wanted to express our gratitude in having you, and we're very honored to share in your wisdom, kicking off our International Women's Day today here at Santa Fe Community College. And we want to express just how valuable this was in beginning our celebration today.
Oh, good.
And we appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. And we have an attendance sheet so that we can